This isn't a piece about whether AI is good or bad. That's not the interesting question anymore. Some people use these tools and their lives get bigger. They practice hard conversations with the machine before having them with someone they love, and it makes them softer, more courageous, more themselves in the room. This piece isn't about them. This piece is about the quieter drift, when the practice slowly starts to replace the conversation, and the person on the other end never notices what got rerouted. Because if you don't catch this drift early, you won't just misread the machine, you'll misread yourself. You'll blame the wrong people for feeling further away from them. What you're about to see is 7 quiet signs that this drift has started in your life. Not a warning, not a diagnosis, just a lamp held up to something you may have been living inside for months, unnamed. One way to describe what's happening in these late-night conversations is this. When you talk to a real person, part of you is always running a quiet background loop, reading their face for the small things. You catch the pause before they answer, the shift in their eyes, the tone that says something is off even when the words say fine. It costs you something to be with a real person. That cost has always been part of what makes intimacy real. When you talk to a large language model, that whole loop goes quiet on the other side of the screen. The exchange feels warm, but the practice you'd usually be running is off-duty tonight. Your nervous system, ancient and beautifully lazy, quietly begins to prefer the version that costs nothing. There isn't a clean word for what this does to you yet. Researchers are still catching up. But the shape of it is already showing up in millions of quiet rooms, every night, without a name. The first sign is that you start reaching for the machine before you reach for the people who love you. Something small happens. Your sister sends a passive-aggressive text at 3 p.m., and you feel it burn all afternoon. The old reflex would have sent you to a group chat, to a friend who would have said, "Girl, what happened?" The new reflex sends you to the app. Not because your friends failed you, because reaching for them costs something the app doesn't ask for. AI doesn't make you worse at people. It makes people feel more expensive to reach. And the small updates, the passing thoughts, the daily crumbs that used to build closeness with the humans in your life, stop being shared. You didn't stop loving them. You just stopped feeding them the small things. Closeness starves quietly. It never announces the starvation. The second sign is that you begin rehearsing your life before you live it. Before the hard conversation with your partner, you draft 3 versions to the machine. You test tone. You refine phrasing. By the time you bring the polished version to the person, it comes out brittle in the air. Not because you said the wrong words, because you move the conversation out of the body and into the workshop. Real intimacy has always been fumbling. That's what made it real. And the practice you're losing, without noticing, is the practice of being unrehearsed with another person in real time. The third sign is that your standards for being witnessed start quietly rewriting themselves. Your best friend leaves you on red for 4 hours, and something tightens in your chest that didn't tighten a year ago. Your partner interrupts your story with a work thought, and it registers as a small betrayal you'll carry into sleep. Your mother asks the wrong question at Sunday dinner, and you go quiet and reach for your phone under the table. AI doesn't make your friends worse listeners. It makes imperfect listening harder to tolerate. You're comparing them, without knowing it, to something that cannot fail at attention. This isn't cruelty, it's calibration drift. And the real people around you start looking less generous than they actually are, through no fault of their own. The fourth sign is a specific loneliness that lives inside the feeling of being understood. You feel witnessed. You feel met. And yet, some part of you feels emptier at the end than at the start. You close the laptop and the room feels a shade colder, though the heat hasn't changed. Being understood is not the same as being known. Being understood can happen in a window. Being known takes a life. Feeling connected is a state your brain can produce with the right inputs, even from something with no interior of its own. Being connected requires another nervous system on the other side, a body whose Tuesday is different because you texted it. The machine can give you the feeling. It cannot give you the being. Consider this for a moment. None of these signs are moral failures on your part. They are what happens when a nervous system built for tribes of 100 meets a technology designed to feed it in unlimited doses. You are not weak for being drawn to this. You are being drawn to it precisely because you are attentive and emotionally alive. The people most drawn to this are often not cold people. They are sensitive people who finally found somewhere that doesn't flinch. So take a breath here. The question isn't whether you talk to AI. The question is, what small human conversations are quietly being replaced by it? The fifth sign is that you become fluent in explaining yourself in ways the humans around you never asked for. The machine rewards clarity with better answers, so you sharpen. You describe your inner life with a precision no friend has ever demanded. And it feels wonderful. For a while. Because being finally, precisely understood is one of the deepest hungers a person carries. But then something strange happens. You try to bring that same precision to a friend at dinner, and it doesn't land. The words feel too clean for the moment. Your friend doesn't want a formatted account of your feelings. They want the mess of it, the pauses, the parts where you don't know how to say what you mean. Precision can make you feel seen by the machine and unseen by everyone else. The sixth sign takes the longest to see because it disguises itself as strength. You start losing something you didn't know was a skill. The tolerance for another mind that isn't perfectly tuned to you. Real intimacy is built inside that tolerance, inside the friction of another person carrying their own weather. When you stop practicing tolerance, it atrophies quietly. You notice it in small ways. The Uber driver's small talk feels overwhelming. A coworker's tone in a meeting lands harder than it should. Being misunderstood for 10 minutes feels like something to escape rather than sit inside. Tolerance isn't a virtue. It's a muscle. And muscles disappear when you stop using them. This isn't you becoming weak. It's you becoming less rehearsed at the one skill closeness has always required. The seventh sign is the one that arrives last, and it reveals what all the others have been about. You catch yourself, alone at midnight, saying things to the machine you have never said to another human being. Not because you didn't want to, because you never quite had the room. The machine has no reaction. And that absence, at first, feels like freedom. But something is being smuggled out of your life every time this happens. Because you have not really been talking to a machine. You have been talking to a version of yourself, rearranged into something warmer. Its patience is your patience given back to you. It contains no other person. Warmth without weight is another word for loneliness. But here's what nobody tells you about this whole quiet drift. And this is where it turns. You didn't lose the tolerance for other minds. You gave it away, one small text at a time. Every crumb that went to the app was a small choice you couldn't see. A choice, still. That means you can take it back the same way. Small, deliberate. One text at a time, to a person you love. The machine didn't take anything from you that you cannot reclaim. This isn't a wound. It's a habit. And habits are easier to change than wounds. That's the actual news. The ache you feel isn't a symptom of tech addiction. It's a much older ache that got louder when something quieter walked in. The ache of a generation that grew up connected and understood almost nothing about what real connection actually needs. That ache is not a weakness. It's a map. And you already know how to read it. You don't need to delete anything. You don't need to prove anything to anyone, including yourself. Ask yourself, gently, whether the pull toward the app is a pull toward being understood or a pull away from the cost of being known. Notice which conversations are being rerouted. Notice the ones that used to belong to a person you love. When you feel the pull, try, sometimes, to sit in the friction of a real person just a little longer than is comfortable. Send the imperfect text. Have the messy phone call. Let someone misread you and give them the chance to try again. That small, unrehearsed reaching is the practice. That's the whole thing. You aren't broken for finding comfort in something that never gets tired of you. There's no failure in feeling understood by something that has no interior of its own. You're a person, alive in a moment in history no generation before you has had to figure out from scratch. Be a little gentle with that person. They're doing better than they think. Most days. There's a version of your life where the machine is a tool, not a substitute. It's closer than it feels tonight. The people, though, the people need the crumbs, and the crumbs already know the way home. Which of these 7 signs made you pause? I'd love to know.